to another interesting episode of Radiorama, where, as the name implies, I'll show you how to work on radios. And I'm going to start this episode in reverse, which is I'm going to start with cosmetics. And the original paint on this looks like it's in pretty good shape, but there's a discoloration, so I'm going to start with some Nupa car wax and polish that out. Okay, let's get on to day number 2 of working on the Crosely. I polished it a bit yesterday. It's got some strange discolorations on top. And I'm not sure if maybe someone spilt chemicals on it or what. The color's too charming for me to repaint. I'm going to leave it as is. It's an old radio. It's fine if it's not perfect. I don't know if it works or not. So I'm going to go ahead and fire it up. I wouldn't recommend doing this on radios that have power transformers. Worst it'll happen on a tube set, a hot chassis set, is that one of the tubes will pop or a resistor in the filament string will pop. Not the end of the world. And I'm not really hearing anything, so the radio could be dead, which could mean a lot of different things. Or maybe it's not plugged in all the way. I've got it kind of jerry-rigged up there. Alright, let me try to plug it in more properly. Okay, I didn't have it plugged in all the way, but it's buzzing as soon as I turn it on, which tells me probably something is shorted. That's all I need to know. Filter caps are hosed bad. So I'm not going to bother playing it anymore. It needs to have a recap job, which is not uncommon. Very common on this era. I took the back off, and nothing really to write home about. This is a very typical All-American 5 design with 5 tubes. I'm going to guessing it's probably 35W4, 50C5, 12BA6, 12BE6, and 12AV6, or some variation of that. And it looks like that the case, or the chassis, is held in with 2 screws. One screw is, of course, missing. I hope that doesn't mean it's broken off. Ew. It's like pure dust bunnies. But I'm going to pull the chassis and take a look underneath and see how original or not original it happens to be. Okay, here it is flipped over, and indeed, this is the nasty old dried out electrolytic capacitor. And we have 3 values in there. Seems like that first value is really high, 100 microfarads. What color is that? Red? Red, where's that going? I can't tell where it's going to. Everything's buried in there. And then we got a 30 and a 10. Not a big deal. Radio's not going to work unless all 3 of those are replaced. And let's see, it is blue and green. That's blue. That's green, that's red. So sometimes the colors fade with age, but these are pretty easy to read. You start getting into the 50s and they were better at making plastics. Hence why a lot of it's probably floating around in the ocean as we speak. We also need to look for the chassis grounding cap, which appears to be this. But what's weird is that it's going to going to the tuning condenser. So that may not be chassis ground at all. That's something different. It's probably one of these caps that I can't see the connections of. It might be the one underneath here. But anyway, I'm going to cut this out and replace each of these 3 individual electrolytics with nice new shiny ones. And hopefully this will work. Or it'll be a pain in the ass and there'll be lots of other problems, which sometimes happens. Okay, we got the electrolytics replaced. Now I replaced that cap while I was at it. So now we'll fire it back up and see if it makes any noise other than humming. Alright, let's let her rip. And first of all, there's no immediate humming like it was doing before. And I do see filament, just barely. It's very dirty tubes. Hoping that speaker isn't hosed. It doesn't look very nice. Got a bunch of dirt in the tuning condenser.
Consultation.
This is unusable. Alright, I need to clean all that debris that's collected in there out of there. And the way we do that initially is use a paintbrush to gently try to get down in and remove whatever crap might be rubbing in there. Sometimes you can also use like little bits of business cards, which I've run out of, but let's see if that made any difference. I doubt it did. Probably need more extensive cleaning. It could also be the volume control. It's not been on probably who knows how long. 50 years. Dirty tube sockets. Well, now it's doing exactly nothing. Did notice there's a shield wire. Alright, I'm not going to get anywhere until I at least clean those tube sockets. Okay, that's all it took to clean the tube sockets.
And this summer we have gotten closer than ever before.
Fun. I mean, you've got to be just absolutely juiced up for Hard Knocks coming up soon, for Aaron Rodgers now when it's...
Top Biden administration official says the latest jobs report indicates...
is essentially telling you...
Good news, the speaker's in good shape. It's just got a bunch of dust on it, but, you know, dust doesn't really hurt anything. It's actually playing pretty well, and keep in mind that's with most of the original paper capacitors in there. It's amazing how well these things work, and it takes very little to get them working when they break. Alright, onward with the recapping job. After looking at this a little bit more closely, I think that is actually the grounding cap, because it's going to the common ground for all the electrolytics. That's kind of a dead giveaway that it is the master grounding cap. On the other hand, we have this weird guy here. Where does it go? Here and there. No, that's definitely not a ground. Yep. Alright, so doing these is pretty simple. Usually if you roll these guys around, you'll see markings that'll indicate what their value is. Like this says like 0.1 microfarad, probably rated at like 600 volts or so. Actually, it seems like a lot of the older radios were rated for like 250. I get 630 volt replacements for everything, unless it calls for higher voltage, which in some cases it does. In fact, the cap that we're going to replace this one with is going to be a very special cap that I've mentioned many times on this channel. It is your across the line safety cap that also serves to lower the amount of current that can get to the chassis and subsequently to the user of the radio, because this is a floating chassis. Everything is grounded through a capacitor, and none of the electrical bits are actually touching chassis. Otherwise it could become a true hot chassis, which means all the juice and potential coming out of your outlet could get to you, which would be very uncomfortable and potentially deadly. So that's why they invented this newer way, starting in the 30s, of isolating the chassis. Alright, I'm mostly done with the recapping and realized, no, I was wrong. That is not the grounding cap, and I should have known it wasn't. My gut said it can't be because it's on this floating tuner unit here. After digging through the old capacitors, it's this one. That's going directly to chassis ground. So I'll probably need to replace this guy, which I thought was the chassis ground, with the value that was in there. That low of a value probably means the radio is going to squeal like crazy. But we do need to replace that, no doubt. Alright, she is working good.
I look at
2023 Pro Football Hall of Fame.
I'd call this a very clean radio as far as the audio and the reception. Very good. We still have one capacitor I forgot. And then it will be the next part of this process, which is adding the oh-so-famous and controversial audio input feature. Alright, so first thing we need to do to add the audio input is establish what is the connection to the volume pot. That is the IF signal, which is the radio signal. Turned out it was this resistor going to this lead. So I clipped that, and what we'll do is put like a switch wire that goes out the back, and they're going to run the audio through this isolation transformer. Should have turned the red music down before I started this, but anyway, audio runs in through the secondary, and then the primary goes to either side of the volume pot, which in this case is, this is the top, and the other will be ground. Okay, so here is the installed device, audio input device. We have a cable that has a Bluetooth connected to it going through a hole I drilled, and then I put a rubber grommet in it so that you don't risk cutting the cord or cutting the insulation. And then the right and left channels goes through a pair of 33 ohm resistors. This is the secondary side of the transformer. The primary is going to either side of the volume pot, which is top of pot and ground. And then we have a little switch wire coming out. I guess you can't see it. Must have folded over, but it's here, and that will reconnect the radio signal. But right now, I got the music playing through it. And then, of course, when I connect the switch in the back, we can restore radio if the user so chooses. So electrically, it's just about done. The only other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little glue on top of this. It's around a bunch of other electronics, and if that ever breaks free, I sure don't want it to make contact with that. Years from now, people are going to open this up and be like, what is that nasty glob? Alright, here's the last stage of the project, which is I'm going to try to make an attempt to remove as much as I can of this discoloration. Otherwise, the paint's really nice. I'm going to use Novus number 2 to start, and I'm going to use my oh-so-famous mechanical buffer. Just makes your life a lot easier. Start with that, see if I can make any progress, and if not, I'll finish up with an old-fashioned Carnauba car wax. It's nice and sunny and hot, so this should go a lot faster than it usually does. Alright, this is after buffing the crap out of it. Anyway, I've got my Bluetooth running through it. I was able to get almost all the discoloration out. It's a little bit of wear here, but I mean, that's to be expected for original paint. Anyway, guys, this one really turned out pretty damn nice. There's a few of these that come across my workbench where I'm like, maybe I should buy them. But I'll get over it. I know this will make someone really happy in the future. Anyway, thanks so much for watching. Until the next item crawls, of course, our workbench. I'll see you guys next time. Adios.